At this point, I'm considering walking around downtown Sacramento and putting up missing posters for the Kings offense. For the second straight game, Sacramento's offense goes MIA. It's supposed to be the strength of the Kings. It's been a weakness as of late, and it's not a good start to the Kings road trip, falling in Minnesota 117-110. You're listening to the Locked On Kings podcast.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time. Time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season long. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports reporter and producer for ABC 10. And normally I record these podcasts right after the game is over. But tonight I delayed myself because I was watching the end of the Royal Rumble, the WWE Royal Rumble event. And if you're not a wrestling fan, don't worry. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But if you are a wrestling fan or interested in just good storytelling, the end of the Royal Rumble, what they're doing with Sami Zayn and the Bloodline and Roman Reigns and everything like that, it's some of the best storytelling, not just in the history of wrestling, but just some of the best storytelling just in drama and in theater, because I do believe WWE is theatrical in so many ways. Some of the best storytelling in sports entertainment and entertainment period right now. And I felt like I had to start with that because I'm literally fresh off of watching the end of that, the end of the Royal Rumble. And if you watched it, I think you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't watched it, but you're going to, I won't spoil it for you. Just watch it. And if you only have time to watch a little bit, just fast forward to the final 5 minutes. That's all I'm telling you. Anyway, let's talk Kings basketball. This is not a WWE podcast. This is the Locked On Kings podcast, although I'd enjoy myself a little bit more tonight if I were just talking about the Royal Rumble and not talking about the Sacramento Kings 117-110 loss in Minnesota. Game one of a 7-game trip. It starts with a doubleheader in Minnesota. Unfortunately for the Kings, they left Sacramento now when the weather is super nice, and they went to freezing cold Minnesota, and their offense was freezing cold to boot. Now, it was a little cold when they left Sacramento with only putting up 95 points against the Toronto Raptors. The good news is the Kings got over the century mark. Thank goodness, but 110 points, that's not nearly what we expect from the Sacramento Kings. Typically, 120 is that sweet spot, and I think Kenny Caraway from ESPN 1320 has pointed out when the Kings score 120 points or more, they've only lost like 2 or 3 or 4 times or something like that. They're normally pretty dominant when they score 120 or more. When the offense struggles to reach that mark, which that's a high mark because of how bad and how poor consistently the Kings defense is, well, they're in a world of hurt. And for the second straight game, like the Kings offense not only was ice cold, it was in a lot of ways unrecognizable. Just the confidence, the fluidity, the movement off of the ball. I didn't see as much of that as we've seen over the course of this season. Now, it's a lot easier to play off of each other, and it's a lot easier to play with energy and move and cut and space the floor when shots are falling and everybody's getting their touches and everything's going right. It's infectious for this Kings team, right? When one guy eats, they all eat seemingly. But right now, one or two guys are eating at different periods of time, and the rest are just kind of watching. And the Kings also missed a boatload of open looks. So I mean, it's not worth panicking at this point. Like, there's no reason to watch 2 games after the Kings went on a 6-game win streak, to watch a couple of games and go, oh man, like this team is completely falling apart and their offense from earlier is gone. Like, it wasn't long ago. Earlier this month, the Kings scored over 130 points 6 times. So that is who this team is. These last 2 games are not who this team is, but they're in a funk as a team, and they're going to have to work hard and hopefully work quickly to figure it out and turn it around, because they don't have the safety net in the Western Conference in order to take a long time to kind of grind through this, especially if they want to maintain in that 3rd or 4th seed. And believe it or not, the Kings are still sitting in the 3rd seed. The LA Clippers are in the 4th seed. And thankfully, the Boston Celtics, not that the Lakers are biting at the heels of the Kings, but the Boston Celtics handled the Lakers in overtime today to give the Kings a little more wiggle room in that sense. But the Kings have scored less than 30 points, technically 29 points or less, in 7 of the last 8 quarters. And they only have one 29-point quarter, and that was the 4th quarter of tonight's game. After that, they have one quarter that's also 28 points, and most of them are in the low to mid 20s. That is very uncharacteristic of this Kings team. This Kings team is normally a 30 plus, sometimes 40 points in a quarter team. And it was only a few games ago against the Memphis Grizzlies where they dropped, 45 points in the first quarter, right? So we know this team is capable of offensive explosions. But I'm wondering, are the Kings missing all these open shots because they're getting tired legs at this point in the season, or is this just a funk that the Sacramento Kings are going through? Maybe it's a combination of both. Either way, if Kevin Huerter is going to miss open threes because he's a little gassed, if De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, with the high amount of minutes that they've been playing, are a little gassed, again, we have to turn our attention to the second unit. And while Malik Monk had 13 points in this game and is slowly kind of working his way out of this funk and had a pretty efficient shooting night, Trey Lyles did not have a good night. Chimezie Metu had a really solid second quarter. I think he had like 3 or 4 dunks just in the second quarter alone when the Kings put together their best quarter of basketball. But for the most part, the Kings bench is letting him down. I thought Davion Mitchell also had some really good moments in the second quarter, also had some great defensive moments, still only finished with 4 points. So offensively, if guys are struggling, especially because they have tired legs, then it's up to the bench that is a little less fatigued to make up for that, and the Kings bench offensively is just not doing that right now. Now, I'm not blaming the bench solely for the reason why the Kings lost. This is definitely a team loss. It's a major team loss. A lot of letdowns on the defensive end of the floor, and then, of course, offensively not playing to the level that we expect. They shot 45% from the field, 27% from three-point range. This team is far more capable than shooting 27%, and 75% from from the free throw line. They missed a handful of free throws, especially technical. I think they missed 2 technical foul free throws and missed a few free throws in the fourth quarter that would have made the game a little bit closer, maybe given the Kings a little more of a chance. But I want to spend a lot of time talking about fourth quarter De'Aaron Fox, because fourth quarter Fox in this game was excellent. 21 of his 29 points in the final quarter. That's phenomenal. And we know De'Aaron Fox is a front runner right now for Clutch Player of the Year, the new NBA award. He absolutely deserves that. Fourth quarter Fox is really how Fox has made a name for himself this season. And there's no but. There's no negative to that, right? Fourth quarter De'Aaron Fox has been excellent. Fourth quarter De'Aaron Fox is really the only reason why the Sacramento Kings had a chance in this game, because of how unstoppable he was in the fourth quarter. My question is, does fourth quarter Fox only happen because first 3 quarters De'Aaron is not as aggressive? If De'Aaron Fox tried to play as aggressively and as attack-minded as he did in the fourth quarter for the first 3 quarters, would that not leave him with enough energy to do what he does at the end? Because for De'Aaron to only have 8 points going into the fourth quarter, especially on a night where the Kings as a team offensively are struggling, that's really hard for the Kings to overcome. And, I mean, the way I look at it is, and this is not pointing fingers at anybody, truly, this is just my honest assessment of the game. For the first 3 quarters, De'Aaron Fox wasn't helping his team too much. Had 8 points, a few assists here or there, did a couple good things, but he was kind of a non-factor compared to what D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Edwards, but especially D'Angelo Russell was doing, hitting his first 7 3-pointers. He was red hot coming out of the gate. But then De'Aaron goes off in the fourth quarter, right? And the team doesn't help him. So you have 3 quarters of the team trying to figure it out. Domantas Sabonis played well, at least looking for his shot. We'll get to that in a little bit. But the team as a whole is trying to kind of carry the load here. And De'Aaron Fox is not really performing to the level that we expect out of the Kings star for the first 3 quarters. Then De'Aaron completely takes the game over and tries to carry the team, single-handedly win this game for the Sacramento Kings and get them back in. And when he needs help, especially on the defensive end of the floor, he's not getting anything. That's tough. I'm never going to say that fourth quarter De'Aaron Fox is a bad thing, but at times, fourth quarter De'Aaron Fox is not worth it if the Kings are in such a deep hole in the fourth quarter because of how they've played in the first 3 quarters, that even a 21-point Herculean quarter isn't enough for the Kings to win. There has to be a balance. De'Aaron has to score more than 8 points in the first 3 quarters in a game where offensively his team is struggling. That way, hopefully a 14 to 16 point fourth quarter for De'Aaron Fox is enough for the Sacramento Kings to secure a win. And I guarantee you Fox would prefer scoring less in a winning fourth quarter than scoring more in a losing fourth quarter. So it's on everybody. It's on Fox to be better throughout the entire game. And that's, I think, going to be an interesting talking point, maybe with Mike Brown when they get back to Sacramento, if this continues, discussing the balance of Fox kind of coasting through the first 3 quarters and exploding in the fourth versus consistent Fox as a threat for all 4 quarters. Like, I think that's going to be important to discuss. But also, like, the rest of the team has to look at themselves and going, our star is absolutely carrying us. Our star is giving us a chance in this game, not to mention how many freaking times the Minnesota Timberwolves tried to give the Kings a wide open door back into the game with bad turnovers or technical fouls or whatever, bad shots. Like, they tried to let the Kings back in. And with the exception of De'Aaron Fox, who was given his all, nobody else was helping the Kings get back in. So it's a team failure. It's a team loss tonight. Fingers are not pointed more at one guy than the other, but naturally De'Aaron Fox is going to get talked about a little bit more because of his star power. The third quarter has been a nightmare for the Sacramento Kings. Before I get to that, though, I want to talk about something that I've noticed recently, and a big storyline around the NBA tonight is officiating, because I don't know if you saw the end of the Lakers and Boston Celtics game, but LeBron James threw a theatrical fit after the final play of the fourth quarter when he thought he was fouled. Looking back at the replay, it does look like he was fouled. Does not get the whistle. Completely throws a tantrum. Patrick Beverley goes and grabs a camera from the sideline and tries to show it to the referee as how they missed the call. I think the NBA confirmed they missed the call well before the last 2-minute report is out. And LeBron then spoke post-game, and I mean, he has a point, and he's talking about how frustrating it is and how so many losses so far this season. He felt like the Lakers have been cheated, blah, blah, blah. I don't give a damn as a Sacramento Kings supporter and someone who understands Kings history when the Los Angeles Lakers maybe won an NBA championship or likely won an NBA championship and made it to the NBA Finals because of ref involvement in the 2002 series. But regardless, the Sacramento Kings this season alone, if you take out the Lakers-Kings history in that context, the Kings this season alone have dealt with a lot of controversial calls that have mainly gone against the Kings and directly cost them wins on multiple occasions. So LeBron, Lakers, you're not the only ones. Okay? So officiating is a point of conversation tonight, and here's what I want to say about officiating. This has been one of the more noticeable years for bad officiating, I feel like. Or maybe it's just being more hyper-analyzed. I have no idea. But it feels like this year we're talking about officiating more than in years past for regular season games. Even if the Sacramento Kings have legitimate gripes, which they've had more than their fair share so far this season, I think the Kings are complaining to the officials a little too much. Like, I see Domantas Sabonis complaining, and I know Sabonis gets hit in the face and hit in the head every single game. So I'm not saying that I wouldn't do the same in his position, but I see Sabonis complaining to the referees seemingly every time he's attacking the basket if he doesn't score, and sometimes even if he does score. De'Aaron Fox already has 10 technical fouls, which has matched his career high in a season, or season high. And I've shared in the past that I'm okay with De'Aaron Fox sticking up for himself, and at times it's good for him to stick up for himself, and he's only been ejected once, he's only been ejected once, so it's not like he's killed his team with too many technical fouls and things like that. But Malik Monk was complaining to the officials tonight. Like, Mike Brown has spoken recently, at least from his perspective, on how the officials are going to officiate a game, and complaining isn't going to change anything, so the Kings need to do a better job of not letting it get to them and control what they can control. And I agree with Mike. Again, I'm not saying that the Kings don't have a gripe, and I'm not trying to be a ref apologist by any means. The officials in tonight's game and every single game and far too many times this season have been dreadful towards the Kings. But at the same time, on a night like tonight where you can question how focused the Sacramento Kings are, the offense isn't there, you're trying to bounce back against a team that you are better than on the road, I would like to see the Kings a little more focused on figuring out their offensive issues and trying to work their way through it rather than complaining about the officials. Although their response to me could be, we're trying to figure out our offense, and the officials are hindering us from doing so because we're getting fouled while we're attacking the basket, and our calls, or we're not getting the calls. So there's an argument for both sides. I completely understand it. I just want to see the Kings complaining a little bit less to the officials. Just my opinion. I don't think it's too over the top, but it's getting more and more noticeable to me, and I think more and more noticeable to casual, just Kings viewers. And I think that hurts the team more than it ultimately helps the team. Let Mike Brown fight those battles if he wants to. Let the fans in the arena chant, "Ref, you suck." But Kings, just focus on playing your game and trying to work your way through it because you're better than that. The third quarter, in the past has been a nightmare quarter for the Kings. Like third quarter, fans always expected the worst, especially if the Kings had a lead going into halftime. For the most part this season, the third quarter has been very good for the Kings. Mike Brown and his coaching staff have shown an ability to make a lot of halftime adjustments, and if the Kings have a lead, they've built upon it. If they've been trailing, they'll work their way back into the game. The Kings have had a lot of dominant third quarters this season. Well, over the last handful of games, the third quarter is back to giving Kings fans nightmares. Tonight, the Kings were outscored 33-22 in the third quarter to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And the Kings did a great job in the second quarter of bouncing back. They were down by, I think, 11 points in the first quarter, and they got it to within like 6 or 8 at the end of the quarter, and then they had a really, really good second quarter to take a small lead into the halftime break. I think they were up by 2. It was like 56-54, something like that. Don't exactly quote me on that. But the Kings were up at halftime, so they did a really good job bouncing back, and I was actually really pleased with that. I thought the Kings should be very happy going into the locker room because they shot terribly, especially in the first quarter. They were shooting horribly as a team. They were not just 27% from 3. They were 27% from the field at the end of the first quarter and still within single digits. That's a win for the Kings. Like, we know this offense is so capable of just exploding and getting hot that if defensively you're doing enough to keep yourself in the game when the offense is struggling as bad as it was in the first quarter, that's signs for success usually for the Kings. So the second quarter was really good. The Kings go into the halftime break up 2. I'm thinking, okay, regroup, come out with some more focus offensively, continue what you were doing right in the second quarter, and maybe you have a chance to really put some pressure on Minnesota and try and put this game away early. Instead, Minnesota came out of the halftime break focused, aggressive, and they outscored the Kings 33-22. Against the Toronto Raptors on Wednesday night, the Kings were outscored 26-17 in the third quarter. And then against the Philadelphia 76ers a handful of games ago, the Kings were outscored in the third quarter 38-22. So 3 out of the last 4 games, the Kings have been destroyed in the third quarter. And what's most concerning is you look at those 3. Sure, there are 2 of quarters there where the Kings have given up 30-plus points. Giving up 38 points to the 76ers, that's way too much, right? But 22 points, 17 points, 22 points. That's what's really nerve-wracking to me. Is defensively, we know this team has struggles. Like when the Kings held the Raptors to 26 points in the third quarter, they should not be outscored by 9 points. To score just 17 points in the third quarter against Toronto. I know Toronto's defense was really good, and we talked about that in that game. But offensively, the Kings are slipping. And the Kings are slipping coming out of the halftime break. And I don't know what's the correct word to describe what we're seeing. Is it they're unfocused? Because I think there could be a conversation or a point to be made, an argument to be made for lack of focus. Are they tired? I think it's fair to say there are some tired legs, and then the Kings are battling through fatigue here past the midway point of the season with the trade deadline and the All-Star break approaching. Or are they just unprepared? Are teams making the halftime adjustments against the Kings that the Kings aren't necessarily fully prepared for? Like the Timberwolves, who I believe were on a second night of a back-to-back tonight, came out with a burst of energy in the third quarter that the Kings didn't match. So again, are they unfocused? Are they tired? Are they unprepared? What is the word that you would give to describe why the Kings are struggling in third quarters as of late? Let me know. At MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Want to talk about Domantas Sabonis. Want to talk about the Kings and their inability to get stops. Plus, we'll look at the remaining 6 games of this road trip and what the Sacramento Kings have to do still to make this a successful road trip. We'll get to all that. Right now, though, I want to let you know that today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by a great sponsor, LinkedIn. And as a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members that you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experience to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to you and to your open jobs with their targeting tools. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, and they compare those insights to 175 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based off your job qualifications all on one platform. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So Domantas Sabonis bounced back, at least in terms of taking care of the basketball. Turned the ball over 8 times against Memphis. Turned the ball over 9 times against Toronto. Only turned the ball over 3 times tonight. Still, you'd like to see that number at 1 or 0, but 3 is way better than 8 or 9. So that's improvement. But the main area of improvement for Domantas Sabonis tonight that I wanted to highlight and that I was pleased with was, if you listen to my post-game Raptors podcast, I was not pleased with Sabonis's lack of aggression to try and score around the rim and look for his own shot. And I know the length and size of the Raptors kind of gave him trouble, but Domantas Sabonis proved against a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year in Rudy Gobert tonight that he's still strong enough and skilled enough around the rim to score no matter how good a defense that he's facing in the paint. Tonight, he was looking to be aggressive. Tonight, he was looking to score. And that was a big reason why the Kings weren't completely blown out of the water in the first half, especially in the first quarter. I think it was Domantas Sabonis and Harrison Barnes that scored 17 of Sacramento's 20-something points in that first quarter. They were the reason why the Kings were in the game early on, and most of that had to do with Sabonis. He finished with 23 points on 9 of 13 shooting from the field. 13 is a good number of field goals, and of course, we're used to Sabonis being an efficient shooter. So if Sabonis is getting 11, 12, 13, 14 field goals up, he's probably making anywhere between 8 to 11 of them, which is excellent. And the Kings need more of that offensively, and especially when the team is struggling, and especially when the second unit is struggling offensively. Sabonis also finished with 10 rebounds, so his double-double streak is back on, restarted at 1. But the Kings as a whole, and I talked about this a little bit already with the team not helping De'Aaron in the fourth quarter, and of course De'Aaron is partially responsible for this too because he's one of 5 guys out there who's supposed to play defense. But the Kings just could not get stops. De'Aaron was scoring every time down the floor. Again, 21 points in the fourth quarter. 21 of Sacramento's 29 points scored by De'Aaron in the fourth quarter. And the rest of the team not only didn't really help him offensively, defensively, they could not stop anybody. With the missed free throws and allowing the Wolves to just get to the paint. Now, the Wolves did hit some big shots, none bigger than Anthony Edwards' just massive clutch 3. I thought Keegan Murray played excellent defense at the end of the game. The Kings were down by 4 and 114 to 110. I thought Keegan Murray played excellent one-on-one defense with Edwards. Stayed in front of him, kept his arm up, contested the shot, didn't overplay the closeout to be whistled for a foul or anything like that. Was close enough to affect the shot, and Anthony Edwards just hit a great step back 3. So sometimes you just have to tip your cap. That's not the reason why the Wolves won. That's not the reason why the Kings lost necessarily, but that was a big dagger from a star in a big moment. Anthony Edwards is a star. And now I saw this on social media. Maybe it's not even worth bringing up here on the podcast, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because it grinds my gears a little bit. I saw this on social media. People saying, see, Anthony Edwards, that's a star compared to De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. De'Aaron Fox is too passive, blah, blah, blah. Never mind the fact that De'Aaron Fox put up 21 points in the fourth quarter alone, including dunks and getting to his spots on the floor, hitting some threes. De'Aaron was excellent in the fourth quarter, and his team let him down. De'Aaron Fox absolutely played like a star in the fourth quarter. It just wasn't enough. Now, you could question, the same way I have, what he did in the first 3 quarters and say that's when the Kings needed him. I understand that argument. Domantas Sabonis is in the MVP conversation. He's not going to win, but he's in the conversation. He's doing what only one other player, and that's the back-to-back MVP and Nikola Jokic, is doing this season. He's 3rd in the league in triple-doubles. He leads the league in rebounding. He's, I think, still the league leader in double-doubles. Domantas Sabonis is a star too. So, again, maybe it's not worth addressing, but Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves are now either 1 or 2 games above 500. The Sacramento Kings are more than that. What are they, 27 and 18 or not? I honestly can't remember where they're at, but they're above that. No, they're not 20. I don't even remember what their record is. They're well above 500, and they're 3rd in the Western Conference. The Wolves are absolutely not. And my question is, if that's how you feel, if you feel that De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis are not stars like Anthony Edwards is, my question is, where are you when the Kings are winning games? Because they've won games, countless games this season, because of Domantas Sabonis directly and because of De'Aaron Fox in his fourth quarters directly. So I guess my point in bringing this up is, one, appreciate what you have in Sacramento, because you do have two stars here, all-stars in Sacramento. Maybe not superstars, and that's fine. Anthony Edwards isn't a superstar either yet. He might be. I don't know. But you have two stars in Sacramento on a better team who have resulted in more wins for that better team. And I'm just saying, don't get too low with Kings losses. Even if the loss on Wednesday to the Raptors sucked, even if the loss tonight sucked and you expect the Kings to beat the Timberwolves, I understand. I do too. But we can't overreact and we can't get too low on these kind of losses. It's not worth it. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. This year, the only app that you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And we're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sportsbook in America. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. If you download FanDuel now, you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. Yeah, you make that money and it's instantly in your account. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 plus in select states. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit is required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable. Sportsbook bonus bets, which expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Obviously, not the best of starts to this road trip for the Kings. The good news is on Monday, they have a chance to right the wrong of losing to Minnesota. I think Monday's game is extremely important to reestablishing themselves, especially offensively, getting their confidence back a little bit, handling their business against Minnesota. It's very difficult in the NBA to beat a team twice, and hopefully the Kings can live up to that mantra, maybe sometimes a cliche. And on top of that, it sets the tone for the remainder of this road trip. Remember, the expectation for this road trip is 4-3, which is essentially 500. It's a little over 500. That's the minimum expectation. And the goal for the Kings, in my opinion, should be 5-2. At this point, of course, 6-1 is the best that they can do. That would be phenomenal, but one step at a time. The Kings need to bounce back on Monday, handle their business, defeat the Minnesota Timberwolves, and especially get their offense back on point. It would be great to see the Kings as a team, and especially the Kings' second unit offensively, get some rhythm going again. Want to thank you again, those of you who tuned in and watched my first ever Locked On Kings live podcast on Friday. Had a blast doing that, and definitely going to be doing more live podcasts in the future, but the support was incredible, so thank you so much for that. I'll keep you posted on when the next time I do a live podcast or anything like that. I might just do a live Q&A podcast and try and do just more live content in general to have that interaction, because it's something that I really, really enjoyed. Also, keep an eye out, because next week, I have more great guests coming. Of course, more great content with the Sacramento Kings, post-game content with the Kings going on this long road trip. So more great stuff coming. It's been a very busy week. I think this is the 6th podcast that I've put out this week alone. So it's been busy, but it's been fun. I've really enjoyed creating the content. Of course, the Sacramento Kings are playing really, really well at this point in the season. It's nice not to have to worry about Tankathon or Victor Wembanyama and the rest of the upcoming draft class. So I'm enjoying taking a break from that kind of coverage, especially here in January when there's so much season to go. But I appreciate your support, appreciate you listening to today's podcast, and hopefully you'll continue to join me for podcasts to come. If you're new to the Locked On Kings podcast, first off, welcome and thank you. Hopefully you'll stick around. If you're watching on YouTube, if you could hit subscribe and hit that notification bell. I really would appreciate that. Also, a thumbs up if you could. And audio listeners, if you could head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review for the Locked On Kings podcast. There's an area for you to hit 5 stars and then leave a little custom blurb about why you would encourage Kings fans or just NBA fans to listen, or it's also a good place for any kind of constructive criticism you have. If you'd like to see or hear this or something more on the podcast, anything is fair game. We want to get the ratings that we feel that we deserve, but also that we have earned. We're not just asking for 5 stars if you don't think the podcast is worthy of that. But hopefully you feel that the podcast is a 5-star podcast. I really appreciate the support that you guys have continued to show. And of course, my longtime listeners, you guys are amazing. I love you, love you, love you so much. I can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.